You're listening to episode 184 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practice from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Terry Bean joins us to speak about Little Rock Secular Buddhists, an in-person group in the heart of Arkansas. The term secular Buddhism was virtually unknown a few years ago, but things are changing, as those of us who do identify as Buddhist, but not quite in the traditional sense, find one another. We have a voice with this podcast, social networking on not only our own Secular Buddhist Association site, but in 12 websites across 9 countries. Those virtual communities are nurturing the creation of more in-person secular Buddhist groups, and today the term secular Buddhism is becoming more common. People are learning that they can do this practice as a contemporary Buddhist, and that doesn't mean having to accept the ideologies of ancient, and to many of us, foreign cultures. Secular Buddhism meets you where you are, and doesn't expect you to become anything other than that self you don't have. Terry Bean has had 3 careers. He retired as an engineer after 28 years from a multinational corporation, is currently an owner of a small business, and also works as a professional artist with his wife, Maritza. They've created and installed public sculptures in Arkansas, and their work has been shown in exhibits in New York, Miami, Switzerland, and China. They teamed up again after experiencing the rich spirituality of secular Buddhism in West Palm Beach, Florida, and then established a secular Buddhist group in Little Rock, Arkansas. So sit back, relax, and have a nice Arkansas Razorback. Our guest today is Terry Bean. Terry, thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Ted.
It's been a great pleasure speaking with you on Facebook and to see some of the progress of the work you're doing. So let's start with asking you to tell us a bit about your background.
Well, Ted, I've had a lot of practice with meditation, but I'm kind of an accidental Buddhist. My wife and I split time between Arkansas and Florida, and in our time in Florida, we had a chance to meet a couple that was heading up a secular Buddhist group at the Unitarian Church there. And they invited us to come to a meeting. And since my wife and I both have had meditation experience and like the idea of meditating in a group because of the energy it evokes. We didn't know that at the time that we'd enjoy it as much as we have, but they invited us, and they were affiliated to some extent with the secular Shambhalist group. And so the Shambhala people came about once a month to the group and led a meditation. So we really started enjoying that, discussing Buddhism with the group, and their focus was to a large extent on Pema Chodron, who's an American Buddhist monk. And she had a lot of books written on loving kindness, and the group kind of liked those. And then we decided to try and get a little deeper into Buddhism and took some Shambhala training. And during this time, I liked the idea of the secular Buddhist. I was born a Catholic, and at some point when I was a teenager, the Christian idea of a God and et cetera is something that I spent some time thinking about and started having difficulty with, and kind of became an atheist. And so for most of my life, I've considered myself a humanist. And because I had difficulty with the concept of the higher power. So when I was exposed to Buddhism, the pieces, just like a puzzle, started fitting together. Because of my scientific background, I worked as an engineer. Things that have proof meant a lot to me, and that was one of the difficulties I was having earlier with spiritual ideology. So when I found out that Buddhism basically is a path of common sense ethics and morality, and that meditation had the benefit of strengthening the mind, then I started thinking, hey, this is starting to make a lot of sense to me. I also, at about the same time, became aware of the Secular Buddhist Association and started reading a lot of the articles and listening to your podcast. And a lot of the references on the Secular Buddhist Association site were really beneficial. And I remember reading Catherine Kerr's work and others. And so it really appealed to my scientific kind of bent that I needed to have proof before I could really commit to a spiritual idea. So the idea of the common sense morality, ethics, right view, right speech, all of those things made so much sense to me that I wondered why, I hadn't discovered it before. It kind of codified what I really knew down deep, but hadn't really focused or crystallized in my mind as a practice. So that's kind of how we got into being accidental Buddhists. It was just through a fortunate meeting that we had with a couple at an art gallery. And they said, why don't you come to our meetings on Monday night? And we did, and we've been really thirsty for the experience ever since.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks who are listening to the podcast would resonate with some of those experiences of finding this being a practice that you do that not only makes a logical sense, but provides some energy in engaging with their lives and can have some pragmatic effects in the world.
Yes, I agree totally with that. The idea that if we had people that were moral and ethical and had strong minds, could make clear decision making, I think that would be wonderful, especially when I think about our politicians. I think it would really be beneficial.
So, Terry, what prompted you and your wife, Maritza, she's also a partner in this with you, to start this meetup group? What made you go for it and take that extra step? Because that's quite a big one.
Well, Little Rock is right in the heart of the Bible Belt. So when we came back from Florida this last year, and we looked around, we couldn't find a secular Buddhist group in town. And I had been doing a lot of blogging and reading the articles on SBA's website. And so I was just inspired to start our own group because of the rich spiritual practice that we had experienced in Florida. And so there's a lot of Buddhist groups in Little Rock. They're small. And in general, the larger ones, the traditional lineages in Little Rock, are based at the Ecumenical Buddhist Center. And it's a building that there's, the different lineages like the Nyingmas and the Sakyas and the Zens, several different Zen groups, etc. practice at. I checked that out. They didn't have a secular Buddhist group. So I turned to the Unitarian Church here in town and found out that they were very supportive of having a secular Buddhist group available for their congregation. In fact, the idea of meditation and the idea of a secular Buddhist kind of fits to a large extent with the Unitarian philosophy. In fact, one of our members one time observed that Unitarians are to Christianity as secular Buddhists are to Buddhism.
I think that's a fairly good way to look at it.
So having an open-minded liberal group such as the Unitarians or other groups in towns, there's actually the Episcopal Church also is very interested in Buddhism, to provide a platform for their own members to learn about the practice and especially about meditation. So I found a willing sponsor and also a number of people in the congregation that were interested in secular Buddhism. Most of the traditional Buddhists were involved with the ecumenical center, and so we kind of filled a hole in the community on the secular aspect of Buddhism, and because of that, we've had a real good response.
Yeah, it sounds like the secular humanist groups and the Unitarian Universalist groups are very amenable to having this kind of offering within their overall congregation. And whether it's just meditation and folks are doing this in a mindfulness context, or they're more overtly secular Buddhists, there is an alignment in ideals and in providing some inspiration and guidance in just our daily lives that really resonates with what we're trying to do with secular Buddhism.
I agree with that totally. And I think if you want to start a group out in a local area, and I look at us as kind of the storefront of secular Buddhism, where SBA is more the online international theoretical research blog and a place to explore ideas. In our group, we're more focused in, rather than in the theoretical aspects, we're in the applied aspects of taking Buddhist theory and then trying to discuss how to live that in everyday life when we're living in the Darwin-type capitalism. It's one of those things that you have to have a pretty good skill level to make that happen when things are moving so quickly and priorities of time and effort are so important. To remember right speech and various aspects of Buddhism and how to do that. So what we're trying to do is talk about, like in engineering, it's an applied science, where physicists are a theoretical science. I kind of see us as being the storefront for applied type Buddhism.
So tell us about the group itself. I noticed on the site, which for folks listening, I'm linking to the episode page for this episode. Do you have an agenda that you follow, and what are the meetings like? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, typically we meet for an hour and a half at 6:30 every Monday night. We start out by welcoming people that are new to the group, introducing ourselves, and then we do a 15-minute breathing type meditation. Then the next thing after that, we have a book. Again, it's an applied book on how to deal with Buddhism in everyday life. The book that we're currently working on is called Work, Sex, Money, and we felt like that those are certainly applied things.
Yeah, my sex life is often theoretical, but yeah.
We actually haven't gotten to the sex part of the book yet, but everybody's anticipating it. So then we discuss what we've read. Then we do a 10-minute walking meditation, and then we do a 5-minute wrap-up where we just, if there's any business things or any questions that people have, then we kind of wrap up the meeting at that point. And it's amazing how fast an hour and a half goes by. It's really easy to run over, and so I have to watch the clock to make sure that we get people out at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I think Mark Nickelbein has the same experience with our practice circle every other week, is that it's confined to an hour, but we could easily go over that, especially with a larger group of attendees.
That's really nice that you have that practice circle online. That's fantastic.
So, Terry, tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you and Maritza encountered as you were contemplating this and putting it together. As you said, you're in the Bible Belt. There may have been some challenges there, but what are some other things you may have run into, especially for other groups who are considering starting up?
Well, I think trying to understand the local scene, who are in the Buddhist community, making contacts with them because they're a fantastic resource for us. And also coming up with a sponsor like the Unitarian Church, trying to bring all of that together and make it happen. So we spent quite a bit of time attending the Ecumenical Buddhist Center meetings, getting to know people. We were meditating with the president of the society. And also, we started participating in the Unitarian Church and kind of bringing everything together so that we had a place and we also had the resource of the Buddhists in the community to support us with their experienced leadership. So to me, bringing the whole thing together was the big initial challenge to make sure that it could materialize.
How about some of the positive experiences? What are some of the rewards that have come from having started this group?
You know, for me personally, there's the fact that I'm coordinating this group with my wife. The fact that we're a team is really important because it gives us a chance to talk about our practice and practice together and experience things and having realizations of our experiences in life and how Buddhism applies to that. That's really been a nice common bond for she and I. In terms of the group, the fact that we're a team also helps relate to the various people that come in. The Meetup website has been excellent for attracting new people, especially outside of the Unitarian Church. And it's one of those things, it's a slow build. We have people from Meetup sign up and then maybe never attend the meeting. We have some that attend and then not come back. Then there's also a percentage that stay. And so it's a slow build, but over time, it's getting bigger and bigger. The other thing is that the Unitarians ask me and Maritza to do a sermon on secular Buddhism. And in the summertime at the Unitarian Church in Little Rock, the minister's on vacation, so they have guest speakers that have the pulpit on Sunday morning, which is an incredible platform. So we were able to recruit members from that experience. So right now, probably 2/3 of our members are from the Unitarian Church and about 1/3 from people from the outside that have heard about us from Meetup or from some other source. One of the challenges has been that not having had any kind of psychiatric experience or counseling of people, it's amazing how people look to you as having some sort of psychological capability. And I think you had a recent podcast on that about separating the meditation leader from the psychologist or psychiatrist because they're two different things. And so that's a challenge to deal with that and keep it in the relationship of a meditation leader and not get into the psychological lives of people. That's one challenge. I think the challenge of just keeping the energy up. I send out an email every week with research material in it, with a quote of the week, a summary of what our last meeting is and what our next meeting is like. It takes a lot of time. It's not one of those things that, as you know, with your experience at SBA, it's extremely time consuming. So anybody that gets involved with it has to understand it's going to take some time, energy, and a lot of communication to keep everything rolling along. The other thing that we do is about once every 4 to 6 weeks, we bring in an experienced Buddhist to come in and talk about their lineage or something in Buddhism. Maybe we've even had people come in to lead us in chanting And all of these things for people that are open-minded and are researching and analyzing, as the Buddha said, to create in your own mind your practice and to follow it. These are all exciting things for people. So that has been a challenge to bring in the right people for that. The Ecumenical Buddhist Society has been very supportive of us for that, and we've drawn from their experience several times now. In fact, they've asked us if we'd like to even write up a proposal to a formal type relationship between the Buddhist Society and our secular Buddhist group. And our group is looking into that currently.
I think that's a terrific development because, Terry, that would be one of the first official recognitions of a group of traditional Buddhist sanghas that are working together, that secular Buddhism is in fact another lineage. It's a separate group, and I would say it's rather unique because it is not really based on a previous lineage. We don't have that one-to-one relationship. And so I wish you the best on that. I was rather hoping to see that kind of collaboration would develop. And I really liked your description of bringing in people from the traditions to expose your group to the different ways in which people in different cultural contexts, different traditional contexts, have engaged with Buddhism over, the past 2.5 millennia. And that's one of the great things about a secular approach and exploration is we get to look at all of these different ways in which people have done this. And we see that with an open heart and open mind and see that, well, I know this particular practice might not be for us, but it's still really fascinating and can help inform how we engage with our practice today.
Yes, and I talk about that quite a bit in our group, that, being secular Buddhist, we respect all lineages, that there's more than one path, there's many paths, and we want to take the secular path, but because we are secular, it gives us the chance to focus on what the different Buddhist traditional practices have been. And I don't want to sound mercurial, but to a large extent, if you're interested in sociology and anthropology and history and things like that, it just brings it all home. It gives you that anchor to the past as to how all of this materialized. And that's fascinating too, just understanding where you are in history, what this slice of time is, how it came about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're modeling the behavior of friendly engagement with others with whom we won't always agree on all points, and we don't have to, and that's okay, because we're a very diverse species as human beings. We as individuals have varied differences, and that's a strength. And I think the secular approach to this is one of our shared humanity, and that's what really gives us an opportunity to share this with others, even across our own different traditional backgrounds.
Well, I have to thank SBA for my view on that. I didn't understand it at first, but going through it and thinking about it, it just made sense. I tell the traditional Buddhists to, please come and talk with us. And if some of our members decide to become Nyingmas or Sakyas or Zens, then that's what we want.
Great. More power to them. They found a practice that's right for them.
Exactly. So, as Buddhists, we're taught not to cling to members, not to cling to things to the best extent possible. And so clinging to membership to me is not what we're about. We want to be open. We want to be respectful. We want to be respected as part of the greater Sangha here. And that's one of the things I've really been working hard towards. And again, I have to thank SBA for the right view on that.
So you mentioned something else. The sermon that you gave, I just want to let people know that I'll be linking to that as well, because you provided a link to that. So folks who are listening, you get a chance to take a look at that. It is on the the meetup.com for the Little Rock Secular Buddhists. But you also mentioned folks who go to the meetup when you find this. If you're in the Little Rock area and you're curious about this and you look it up on Meetup, bear in mind what you see there for membership is just a portion, because you also have a lot of folks from the Unitarian groups that they're not going to the meetup because they're already there. They're already in person. So it's more than the membership that you're seeing on the meetup.
Yes, it is. In fact, I've urged our members to sign up on Meetup, and it doesn't stick. What the people that sign up are basically the people that are searching for something, and secular concept makes sense to them. There's many other meetup groups. There's atheist groups. There's all free thinking groups. There's all kinds of people, and they have lots of members here in town. But our group hasn't, like you said, wanted to sign up on Meetup for the reason that as Unitarians are already aware of our secular Buddhist group and are participating in it. So, but I have to say this, that Meetup has given us about a third of our additional members, and our Unitarian members have been, relatively steady, and the Meetup portion of our group is growing, maybe one or two a month, which to me is, really good.
Yeah, and I think that's more than many in-person groups will see, is that kind of growth. And I think that will continue to increase with time. We'll see how that goes. So speaking of traditions, I also wanted to chat for a few minutes about, you have some visiting monastics coming in October. Tell us about that event.
Okay. Being an accidental Buddhist, I have to pinch myself sometimes that we're sponsoring some traditional Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist, the Geluk monks that are servicing Tibetan refugees in India. And they're here on a national tour, and they were checking with Little Rock to see if Little Rock Buddhists were interested in hosting the monks. And as it turned out, the Ecumenical Buddhist Center is growing and is changing locations and going into a larger facility. And at the same time, when the monks were going to be in town, and because of our relationship with the Buddhist Society, they asked us if we would be willing to sponsor them. And so, we felt very privileged and jumped at the opportunity. And as it's turned out, it's really a fairly extensive program. We've got a curator from the Arkansas Arts Center, a past curator that is an artist and has focused on Tibetan art and has something like 45 Tibetan paintings that she's done herself, and also some Tibetan paintings that are original works from Tibet. And so on Friday night, she's going to give a talk about her paintings, how she got interested in Tibetan Buddhism, and what the paintings mean, and then give a tour. We're hanging her paintings in the sanctuary in the fellowship hall, and so she's going to give a tour. So that's kind of going to kick the weekend off. And then the next day, when the monks come in, we're going to have a welcoming, and they're going to give a Dharma talk. And then on Sunday, they're going to be in the religious education building, do sand painting with the kids, also do the sermon and talk about their Tibetan refugee situation and the political situation in Tibet. And, it just keeps going on. And then Monday, we're going to do a community outreach, and the Clinton School of Public Service is going to have them, and Heifer International, which has operations in India and services the Tibetans, have a headquarters here. And we're also going to go to a private academy with the monks. So it's going to be like a 4-day Tibetan festival here in Little Rock.
It's outstanding.
In October. So it's amazing how all of this stuff has come together, Ted. It's just incredible that from the time that we got back from Florida this spring till now, all of the rich spiritual experiences that we've had.
And in just a few short months, you've created a group, found bounds with other groups that are similarly aligned, gotten great support from that, brought people in using internet technology, and now you get to be a mover and a shaker in this sharing of the Tibetan tradition with people in Little Rock, which is again, just such a wonderful development. I'm so happy for you on that.
Well, thanks a lot, Ted. Little Rock, has a history of both very conservative. Politically, it's becoming more and more fundamental conservative type mentality. But in the past, we've had William Fulbright, Bill Clinton, David Pryor, and Dale Bumpers. We've had a lot of liberal politicians too. So it's not that there's not any liberal community here. It's just that in terms of domination of parochial thought, the fundamentalists seem to have the upper hand right now.
Time will tell where that goes. Time will tell. Time will tell. Well, our guest today has been Terry Bean. Terry and his wife Maritza are the founders to the Little Rock Secular Buddhists. They have a meetup page, which I will be linking to on this episode page. Terry, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time and all of your work.
Well, I've really enjoyed it, Ted. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at secularbuddhism.org, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizen Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are also linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.